to kick this off, this is going to be a nice backdrop right here, as we're going to hear from Brad Stevens at one of his pressers at the end of the season. And he was asked about Jaylen Brown.
Brad, Jaylen has expressed a lot of frustration in the immediate aftermath of the loss. And Tracy McGrady came out today or yesterday. Obviously, Tracy's close with Jaylen and said Jaylen has some frustrations with the organization. Have you felt any of those frustrations? Has he expressed them to you? Is the relationship with Jaylen, has that evolved at all?
Before Brad answers, keep in mind what I said before about Jaylen Brown mentioning on his live stream how the Celtics quickly changed what their initial game plan was during the regular season once Jason Tatum made his return. And that's another thing. Tatum is not even guaranteed to be the same Jason Tatum before the injury. That's still yet to be determined. But we're hearing a lot of trade rumors involving Brown's name when it comes to Giannis.
I talked to Jaylen Monday a little bit after he just real quickly and was nothing but positive. He has not expressed those frustrations to me. We've been here 10 years together, and I do think that, obviously I love JB and everybody around here loves JB. And, I think just like any of our other guys, as we get to the end of the season, I'll be here and my door's always open. And if anybody ever wants to come in and talk about it and talk about, their team, their place, whatever the case may be, I'm all ears. And that would be 1 through 16, not just, not just Jaylen, not just Jason, not just the guys that have been here. I think it's really important to be available. So I certainly am, and none of that has been expressed to me.
Now, Brad Stevens is in a very unique position when it comes to Jaylen Brown, because this was very unexpected for Tatum to be out and for Jaylen Brown to lead this team in a 50-plus win season. The way they changed their playoff game plan, just going back to Tatum, might have been a little bit too early. You got to be very delicate, because throughout the years, as we'll hear from Jaylen Brown right now, we're going to see the relationship with the Celtics hasn't necessarily been one of them consistently letting him know that he's valued. And at times, as Jaylen Brown's going to allude right here, the Celtics really try to control him. You guys check it out, and every once in a while, I'll check in.
Man, but I would say, I think that sums it up perfectly. We all have different views of ourselves, different views from our parents, different views from people back home, different views from the organization, and it all might not be the reality of where you at right now. So the problem is, I think sometimes is that patience and a plan or a strategy doesn't come into effect. It just thinks I'm supposed to get this right now. And at some point, it's like, maybe you make that decision where it's not gonna work out here. Maybe I need to go somewhere else. Or maybe my reality in my brain is not the reality that I'm living. But at some point, those decisions have to get made. But for me, how I looked at it is like, I'm gonna accept the role that they are offering me while knowing the role that I have for myself, right? And I'm gonna do your role to perfection, but I'm gonna sneak my little 1-2 in there, every chance I get, basically.
Yeah.
And I'm my strategy is I'm gonna show the people. I didn't care about the front office. Once you get the people talking about it, the front office is gonna start making decisions.
Yeah.
Because they got pressure on them. Like, I remember the Boston Celtics. We remember the year we came back. Gordon came back. Kyrie came back after the year that we took the team almost to the finals in 2018. Then we come back to the next year. Gordon and Kyrie are now back on that team, and so now we got this loaded team with all this talent. They decided to move me to the bench, which was understandable. You got guys, you making $30 million or whatever, but as a 20-year-old kid who is extremely talented, that slowed down my development.
And Brad Stevens right there did not know how to manage all those different kind of personalities and the political situations. But Jaylen Brown right here lets it be known of one of the only reasons why he started is because he got to the fan bases first, and they started making noise about why isn't he part of the starting five.
So in that moment, like, how do I get back to where I want to get back to? 'Cause now I'm getting criticized for not working on my game.
Right.
Now I'm getting criticized for not being ready for my opportunities. In reality, it was we just had a stacked deck, and it was too much responsibility for, everyone to equally share. So what I did was like, how do you win over the fans, right? Anytime I'm on the floor, I'm the best defender on the floor, and then I'm creating highlights where I'm like, if I get a fast break, if you look at that year, I'm windmilling it.
Yeah.
If I get a fast break, I'm down here with it. So now they start to be like, why isn't this kid playing more, right? And why isn't he playing more consistently? And they start asking those questions. And in Boston, what ended up happening, this is like a forgotten moment in time, but they ended up having a petition. Like the fans sent a petition, like put Jaylen back in the starting lineup.
Wow.
And that eventually made the Celtics put me back in the starting lineup. Not because I feel like they wanted to. I think Brad preferred Gordon. One, he was making more money. Two, he was coming back off injury. Also the butler.
Now, if you notice that right there, you hear Andre Iguodala laughing because these are parts that Jaylen Brown was not supposed to say out loud. He just stated, I don't think Brad wanted me in the starting lineup. He wasn't supposed to say that part out loud, especially knowing that the situation he's in right now, ending the season and some of his live streams kind of got the NBA media going.
Butler.
So
Keep it at Butler.
I'm just, you know what I'm saying? They gave Gordon every chance offensively that he absolutely could. And like they felt like he deserved it because he made that big commitment to come from Utah and from being an all-star to now, and it just didn't work out.
Again, that's Danny Ainge trying to manage the politics of that team. And we're seeing right from the get-go, Jaylen Brown remembers not being as valued. We were always hearing his name in trade rumors. Remember the AD for Jaylen Brown rumors. Now it's Giannis for Jaylen Brown, especially coming out of a season where he led a team that should have been tanking to 50 plus wins. If we sit back and had to bet all the money in our bank account, would we say a healthy Jason Tatum is guaranteed to do the same thing? Just think about it for a sec. And with that in mind, knowing how Jaylen Brown was treated when he first arrived in Boston, not being as valued, we're now going to hear him explain how they were also trying to control his voice.
It's like there's a bigger game going on, and obviously I love to play the game of basketball, and I've talked about this before. Sports is a mechanism, could be viewed as a mechanism for control. And I remember the first time I said that, I was 20 years old. I had just gotten to the league. I was in Boston, and I'm thinking I'm talking to like a normal beat writer. Happened to be like this big writer for The Guardian. And it was like, this dude put me on the cover of The Guardian newspaper saying, Jaylen Brown says sports is a mechanism for control. That's when I was 19 years old. And then that went viral. And then that's when I got invited to Harvard to go speak about it. So Harvard invited me based on that article in The Guardian to come speak about it. That's why I became the youngest Harvard lecturer. I was talking about how sports is a mechanism for control, because that became controversial. Like, how could this 19-year-old player say sports is a mechanism for control when sports the NBA just helped him recreate generational wealth? He just changed his whole family's life through sport. How could he criticize it, right? So I got a lot of pushback, even from my organization. Danny Ainge came and talked to me, like, what is this? Of course, you're 19 years old, you just got drafted, your family, how can you say that sports is a mechanism for control? They didn't understand, but there was understanding that needed to be had.
Yeah.
And I spoke to that at 19, and I still speak to it to this day. Sports is so political. It is like everything that we can talk about so many different times that I could bring up just through my career, and I can even talk about what's going on right now. The statements that are being made. It's political as fuck. So I think that's the biggest misconception. I think a lot of people still who watch, they think like, oh, it's just sports, it's just entertainment. Let me turn my brain off. No, but you being programmed to think a certain way through the sports, through the marketing, through the statements, through what the players is pushing, and what we co-signing, what the league is co-signing, what they marketing on, all of that stuff is a part of it. It's propaganda.
AKA, it sounds like he's talking about the gambling. 90% of that sounds like he's talking about the gambling. But again, we're now seeing how the relationship was when he first initially got there, not feeling valued. They're trying to control his voice. They're questioning him on what he's telling the media. A lot of these sports leagues are major real estate for just cultural influence. That's the reason in recent years we've seen a major push for a lot of the political personalities to kind of merge themselves in the sports world. It's because they get that understanding. They're trying to attach themselves to that cultural real estate to influence people to believe in their political candidates or just whatever philosophies they go by. But right here, we're going to get some great insight from former NBA champion with the Dallas Mavericks, Brendan Haywood, as he sat down with another NBA media personality, Rick Buford, and he gives us insight on a lot of the noise that he's hearing from his NBA circles surrounding the Boston Celtics' feelings on Jaylen Brown. You guys check it out, and every once in a while, I'll check in.
So teams are fearful of sitting down and just being flat out honest. And what they're going to need to do is have a come to Jesus moment, because if the Boston Celtics let this just try to simmer and go away on its own, it's not going to work. I guarantee you it ain't going to work, because Jaylen Brown already feel like, a matter of fact, I'm going to give you something. I know some people in Boston that really didn't believe that Jaylen Brown could carry that team this year. And Jaylen Brown can sense it and feel it.
Shit, we could all feel it. You could tell from that transaction they made at the end of the season that they're not feeling it. Again, the question that's the elephant in the room is that if we all had to bet whatever we had in our bank accounts on Jason Tatum being in the same exact position Jaylen Brown was, 100% healthy and leading that same team to the 50-plus game win season, is that a guarantee Tatum could have did the same thing? Would any of us be comfortable making that bet that Tatum would do the same thing? And remember, Derek White wasn't the same player. He definitely took a step back this season.
And that's why he kind of said what he said. Like, yeah, there were people in my own franchise that didn't believe that what we did this year with me as the guy could happen. So now that it's happened, and after you've been an MVP, after you've helped win a championship, after you've led a team that was supposed to be a lottery team to a top-tier playoff spot, the thanks you get is, yeah, get out of here. We want another player.
Hey, also the thanks he got is what exactly he referred to in his live stream. The fact that they went with a completely different game plan that was geared more with Tatum being the lead. And it said a lot. Tatum is not 100% healthy. Also, it's too late in the season to begin to switch things up.
Yeah, there's going to have to be a moment of reckoning where Jaylen Brown, the front office, and the coaching staff all sit down and talk about how do we move past this. And Tatum needs to be there also.
But how can you, though? What can you say? And this is the thing. You're right. And it's always amazed me about the lack of communication or the fear of sitting down and having a face-to-face conversation. I can't tell you the number of times over the course of my career when a team knew that I was close to a guy, they would come to me to find out what they were thinking or how do we get this message to them. I'm like, he plays for you. But it always amazed me that organizations would be afraid to sit down and actually talk to a guy.
I mean, look at the way the Celtics handled the Ime Udoka situation. That shit was awkward as hell. You know, this goes back to Brad Stevens not being able to manage the personalities on that 2017 team. Terry Rozier, Marcus Smart, Jaylen Brown, Tatum. You got the politics of Gordon Hayward, and of course, Kyrie. Sometimes that's a thing organizations overlook. Just the more direct communication on how someone's really feeling. It's a flaw that a lot of companies have, and we all see it because some of us have either worked or currently working for an organization that avoids conflict.
Face to face and say, here's the real. And I always thought, you know what? The player may not like it, but he will appreciate the fact that you came directly to them.
He'll respect.
And teams more teams than not will not do that. The problem that I have here is the damage is already done. Jaylen already demonstrated that he's more than what you thought he was. He was already having bad feelings, as you noted, because of the way everything went last year, and he defied what the team believed. And now Jason Tatum comes back, and it's like he didn't prove anything, at least not seemingly to the Celtics, in terms of how things were going to be organized. They're like, oh, Jason Tatum's back? Good. Oh, we can get Giannis for Jaylen? Okay, let's move on that. I mean, I don't know that you can reconcile that, even if you sit down, short of saying, hey, look, we're going to try to do something. Just give us some time. Let's all try to work together for as long as we can, as long as we have to.
The Boston Celtics trying to trade Jaylen Brown for Giannis, in Jaylen's mind, is going to solidify all the rumors and the stuff that he was hearing about how certain people in the front office or within his Boston organization really don't believe in him or don't want him there, or maybe he rubs certain people the wrong way. I'm out the way in Charlotte, and I'm hearing that, so I know he's hearing it.
Wow, you fellas hear that? Let's listen to it one more time.
And the stuff that he was hearing about how certain people in the front office or within his Boston organization really don't believe in him or don't want him there, or maybe he rubs certain people the wrong way. I'm out the way in Charlotte, and I'm hearing that, so I know he's hearing it. I said this yesterday on my own social platform, and some people took it the wrong way. I know that Giannis is a better player than Jaylen Brown, but I don't know if this present version of Giannis is 2 to 3 first-round picks better than this present version of Jaylen Brown.
Facts. Oh my God, it doesn't make any sense. After all those lower body surgeries and Giannis having a pending Supermax contract on top of that, fuck out of here, man. Come on.
Most of the time, if you got a player that's 29, that's a all-NBA level defender, that's a finals MVP, if you got to mortgage your future to bring in a guy that's 31 with a bunch of calf strains, most GMs say, nah, we good. We'll keep what we have plus our draft picks. The fact that they were willing to move says a lot, and Jaylen Brown's going to feel it. And if the Boston Celtics are going to be what they want to be next year, they're going to have an open discussion about it.
Brendan Haywood said the quiet part out loud right there. Jaylen Brown should be reassessing his relationship with the Celtics. They kind of said a lot by just even entertaining that Giannis trade. So at this moment, we're at the part of the segment where we're going to hear from 2 established NBA media insiders. One with Chris Mannix, who used to be a beat reporter for the Celtics, and Rachel Nichols, who does have a vote when it comes to the regular season MVP awards. But they gave great insight into the expectations the Celtics had coming into the season, and also Jaylen Brown feeling disrespected during the playoffs when the organization pivoted more towards Tatum. Once again, as I promised, we're going to get into it. But you guys check it out, and every once in a while, I'll check in.
I think the media likes Jaylen Brown, personally. The media voted him Conference Finals Player of the Year, MVP, and Finals MVP. That was the media. So, and he wasn't the automatic choice.
I think he's also all-interview team, too. Wasn't he one of those?
Exactly. Yeah. So, I don't think it's the media. I voted Jaylen 5th on my MVP ballot and 6th, second team.
Ooh, okay.
On my All-NBA
so you're
ballot.
The culprits.
No, I think those are for 2 different things, right? The way he powered the Celtics through the season, he was the emblem, certainly on the court, Missoula to the sideline, of this is no gap year. We're not quitting. Come get us. We're coming for you. Like, that goes into an MVP for me. The leadership, the value you have. All-NBA, when I consider All-NBA, it's kind of like, who is the best player in this season? What are your stats? How did you impact sort of technically X's and O's? And I thought Cade Cunningham had a bigger hand there.
Ever since she voted for Russell Westbrook for MVP, I didn't think she was valid, but she has made a good case right here when it comes to Jaylen Brown. Cade Cunningham did have the better season, leading his team to the top of the Eastern Conference. And also the things she said about Jaylen Brown's leadership that does not get mentioned enough. But as we continue here, they're going to elaborate on the lack of expectations the Celtics had coming into the season.
Jaylen Brown is, I think, the smartest player in the NBA. I really do. And he has such advanced ideas about issues that a lot of NBA players don't even spend time on. But it's a shame, and therefore it is a shame to me to see him fall into, oh, the media doesn't like me. The media actually really likes him, but sometimes people are better, and that's okay. Being upset that you are, I mean, I would bet that he was 6th. I know they don't do that for second team All-NBA, but I would bet being voted the 6th best player in the best league in the entire world, so basically being told you're the 6th best guy in the entire world at playing basketball.
Well, one thing he would have to look at is why Luka is up there. And of course, we all know Luka is the man. He does his thing offensively, but he did barely even play the 65 games. I believe he only had 64. And not only that, for the first All-NBA team, Jaylen Brown led his team to more wins with far less talent. Again, we got to look at the standards of just making these teams a little funny.
I just love to get away from that as a snub.
But I get where he's coming from in that, like, if you're 5th, you can say I was top 5. The ability to say top 5.
In one of those
MVP,
categories, I voted for him. But did you?
First team, yeah, I did both. I was
right.
5th.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Boston. I didn't even need to ask you that.
Look, we're prisoners of the moment in a sense, because there's a lot of negativity around Boston. They get beat in the first round. Jaylen goes off on some of these tangents on his streams, but they were the biggest surprise of the NBA season. Mm-hmm. They had one All-Star. It was Jaylen Brown.
Again.
They won 56 games. They were a better offensive team statistically this year than they were last year.
Yep.
And they incorporated like 6 new guys into their rotation.
And they kept making trades even at the end of the season just to pretty much save money with that Vooch pickup.
I think Jaylen Brown deserved at least first team credit for that, to me. Like, maybe, can you put him over Luka? Probably not. Wemby, of course not. Joe.
No, go back on that. For this season, you could put him over Luka. He had the better record. He played with far less talent while his team kept on just making moves to kind of rebuild. Also, defensively, his numbers are way, way ahead of Luka's. And again, we're hearing from 2 voters that get to participate on who gets these awards. And to get their perspectives and not only some of the insight that we're going to get later on, this is where we're going to begin to tie the many parts of this segment all together.
Jokic, of course not. Shea, of course not. But, like, part of it with Cade was that he did miss a bunch of games towards the end of the season. Part of it for me with Cade is that he did have Jalen Duren, who was an all-star on that team as well. Mm-hmm. That team also had cohesion. They were like largely the same team that won 44 games a year ago. They were supposed to take another step. The Celtics were supposed to be awful. They were supposed to be a 40-ish win team, maybe less, kicking around in the back half of the playoff bracket.
The Celtics were supposed to be so bad, even you didn't believe in them.
I thought they'd be horrible. They started the season 0-3. I'm like, all right, tank time.
Yeah.
Let's go. We can go get AJ DeBanza. Bring AJ DeBanza back to Boston. They turned out to be a 56-win team and one of the best teams in the NBA. So
again, that's why I put him on my MVP ballot. And obviously, I know that the Celtics got to number 2, right? They got to number 2. It's been so long, I can't remember. But the Pistons were number 1. I think the entire season. Was it wire to wire?
I don't know if it was wire to wire. It was close. It was, they had a pretty big lead. They did hold on to it with Cade out of the lineup too. Like Cade missed the last few weeks.
But it was I split my vote. That's how close it was for me. But I see, ultimately, I was like, great. I see those as 2 different categories. The MVP is for different qualities than all NBA. And so therefore, I'm weighing different qualities these 2 guys had in a different way. When Jaylen said on one of these other streams, this was my favorite year of playing basketball.
Didn't love that. No, knew what he was saying because it's not the first time that he said it.
And also, he's been put in a position where he has to at least make it be known of his value. Earlier in this segment, we heard the many parts where Jaylen Brown's first interactions coming into the league with the Boston Celtics have been them trying to not only police his voice, but also not necessarily valuing him, coming off the bench and consistently having his name tossed out there in trade rumors as far back as the days when they tried to go after Anthony Davis.
I was around the team a little bit, not as much anymore, but I was around the team a little bit, and he said kind of that same thing during the season. Like, he loved exceeding expectations. I bet if you put a gun to Joe Mazzulla's head, he probably said the same thing. This was his favorite season. You saw that line he gave to Derek White, called him last summer and said, we're going to suck. Everybody, I love it. Everybody said we're going to suck. We're going to be great.
If you think that the most competitive person on earth, Joe Mazzulla, favorite season was not the season he won the title.
I don't know.
You are a high person.
I think you're wrong. I think Joe Mazzulla.
We'll ask him. You and I will ask him. We both talked to him a lot off camera.
Defying expectations in the way that they did.
I have never been a split up the Jays person. I always thought that conversation was dumb. The Celtics have two great players. Why would you want to only have one great player when you can have two? The only way, to me, you trade Jaylen Brown is if Jaylen Brown asks for a trade.
I'd agree. I think there's no reason to trade a 29-year-old who just had the best season of his career, who's shown that he can win and be successful opposite Jason Tatum.
So is Jaylen Brown going to ask for a trade? One of the rumored places for Giannis is Boston.
No, I wouldn't do that in a million years. Not in a million billion years would I do that. Why would, look, Giannis, if this was 3 years ago, yes, in a New York minute. But Giannis has had so many soft tissue injuries.
I don't disagree. I'm just saying that's one of the fake trades out there for Giannis.
Not in a million kajillion years would I do that. 2 years ago, you won the damn championship. This year, you won 56 games without your best player. You've got a big fat trade exception. You've got your first round draft pick. You've got Jason Tatum having a full off season to fix, to muscle up that injured leg.
Hey, that's the part we still have to see. Is Tatum even going to return being the old Jason Tatum? And just to add one more thing to that crazy list Chris Mannix just made about making the trade for Giannis, we gotta factor in his pending Supermax contract.
And then you got this whole band of improved players coming back next year. Not in a million years. The Celtics right now, I don't care if the Knicks win the championship. When the regular season starts next year, you probably make Boston the favorite to win the East. Probably.
We'll see.
I'm just saying,
again, I'm not advocating for a Jaylen Brown trade.
Maybe it'll be the number one seed in the East at least.
I think that Jaylen Brown should retire as a Celtic. I absolutely do. But the only time that you would say, oh, they're not the strongest team coming back with him is if he doesn't want to be there. So that's the only thing. And as we see a cacophony of Giannis trade, rumors, and there was more over the weekend.
On this stream, Jaylen Brown also said, I want to be a Celtic for the next 10 years. He said it.
I agree.
So, if he says he wants to be there, he's locked in for the next 3 years. I wouldn't do an extension, I think, not just for Jaylen Brown. We had this conversation about when Embiid was getting his extension. I wouldn't give guys with 3 years left in their contracts extension. Do it with 1 year left in his contract, not 3. But I'd have him around. Jason Tatum is on a long-term contract. Derek White is still there. Peyton Pritchard has 2 years left on the deal of the century that he's on.
Derek
not
White,
a chance.
who I love as a player,
Yeah.
needs to spend this entire summer shooting.
Rachel Nichols is right on time. That is one of the biggest elephants in the room that the media refuses to speak on. Jaylen Brown had one of his best seasons while his team kept on moving people around in order to restart. And at the same time, one of their core players, and Derek White, had a bad year. That's the tricky thing about the NBA. Guys, sometimes the way you come into the league is the way you're perceived going forward. And sometimes it's hard for fans and even NBA personnel to kind of change their opinion about what you've done. Look what Jalen Brunson's going through. Even after winning the NBA Finals, they're still questioning him. Also, the fact that Jaylen Brown didn't necessarily have some parts of his game as polished when he first came in, and the Celtics eventually regulating him to the bench with all the new acquisitions they made. Whatever Jaylen Brown was in that time period is exactly the way they kind of kept him at. And that's what he was making reference to when he said, oh, they had a certain vision for me, but I had a bigger vision for myself, etc., etc. So now Rachel Nichols and Chris Mannix do a follow-up in which they reveal a lot of the issues that were going on during the playoffs when the Celtics had switched their system right back with Tatum having full control, just coming off that injury. There's a disconnect between Jaylen Brown and the Celtics, and they're going to reveal it here. You guys check it out, and every once in a while, I'll check in.
It was reported multiple places during the week the Celtics were all in on Giannis. Clearly they were not, because all in means you go all in, and they weren't willing to do that.
Right.
They're willing to part with Jaylen Brown. They're willing to part with a couple of first-round picks, but they weren't willing to go deep into their cache of young players. They weren't willing to go with swaps and future picks and all the things they could have done.
Which I think was smart, don't you?
Well, that's the question. Like, should they have gone all in and committed Hugo Gonzalez, committed Baylor Shireman, committed, a couple of pick swaps to this in order to get Giannis Antetokounmpo?
I mean, look, it's not, I think the misinterpretation, some people hear that and they're like, really? You lost out on Giannis because of Hugo Gonzalez? Like, come on, man, what are you doing? It's not necessarily just that. It's also about, it's hard to replace that depth. It's not necessarily this player is untouchable when Jaylen Brown isn't. But it's hard to replace that depth if you give everything away, including pick swaps and more draft assets. So I think we just had this conversation, if you gut your team to get this big star player, you're not going to end up winning. And in Boston, this is the team with 18 championships. That is the bar. And so I wouldn't have gone, quote, all in the way that you're talking about. And not because I think Hugo Gonzalez is the greatest player on earth. I just think that the overall position it would have left the team in is what we were just talking about. But I do wonder now what they are going to do. I don't personally, and you're around the Celtics 100 times more than I am, I don't know if I buy the relationship with Jaylen Brown is now too tainted. First of all, will they or won't they trade Jaylen Brown has been a topic for the last 5 years, so he's used to it. I know the twitch and the this and he's mad and whatever, but Boston for a long time when Danny Ainge was running things, it was Danny Ainge would trade his mother, right? That you give Danny Ainge enough, he would trade his mother. And the bottom line was, hey, everybody is dealable here if we think the team is going to be better. And that is the ethos. And if that is the ethos around the team, nobody can be, well, I should not be tradable. I should not be that in that category. And I think if you are smart enough as a front office, and I don't know if Brad Stevens has that Danny Ainge sort of reputation inside the team, I think you can be like, yeah, grow up. Don't be a baby. This is the business. We're paying you $300 million plus.
And that right there is really the crux, because Brad Stevens already proved when he coached that team back in 2017 with the personalities of Kyrie Irving, Terry Rozier, Marcus Smart, Jaylen Brown coming off the bench, the politics of Gordon Hayward and his injury. He couldn't manage any of that. So are we really left to believe that some of that animosity Jaylen Brown has ever since he entered the Celtics building, that it's been managed up to this point? I don't know.
Come play with Jason Tatum, who you like. We'll make other, arrangements around the edges. I don't buy that the relationship is soured too much. You have to deal him for less than you could otherwise get for him. Do you?
Well, let me start with, I don't think that the Celtics should have gone all in for Giannis. I don't think they should have gutted the team because this is not 2022.
Yeah.
Giannis is right now damaged goods. He has had, as we mentioned, multiple years of these kind of soft tissue injuries, calf injuries that are enormous red flags for a player of his size and the way that he plays. And he's also not a player that has shown that he's evolving as he's getting older. This is the second part of it. Like, is the relationship irrevocably damaged? I do think it's more damaged than you think. I think
I buy it. You would know.
Now, as you hear it right there, Rachel Nichols says, hey, as you would know, because Chris Mannix does have inside information for the Celtics. I believe he used to be a beat writer for them. But right here, he's going to express some of the sentiments that he's been told that's coming out of that building.
Every year it's like death taxes at a Jaylen Brown trade rumor in Boston. It was Kawhi Leonard in 2018. It was Anthony Davis in 19 and 20. It was Kevin Durant in 2022. But this to me feels different. In the early years, Jaylen Brown was just like this young kid that had proven nothing. In 2022, he had proven something. And I reported at the time that he was pretty pissed off at those trade talks. He was, I don't want to overcharacterize his emotions, but he was upset that after helping lead the team to the finals and coming 2 wins away from winning a championship, he's being dangled for a player that's older than him that hadn't accomplished, what he had as recently as he did in Kevin Durant. This is like that on steroids, right? Like, this is Jaylen Brown coming off an all-NBA season, coming off a year where he finished 6th in MVP voting, coming off a year where he did lead this team to 56 wins. I mean, 56 wins for the Celtics this year. We focus on the ending, but 56 wins was remarkable. What they did this year was incredible. I think after all that, to again, not only hear his name in trade rumors, but to see his name out there as one of the finalists, as seeing it firmly in print that this was close to happening, I think that caused some pretty significant damage to this relationship. And look, Brad Stevens, I was up late last night watching his press conference after the draft. There were multiple times Brad Stevens could have put the kibosh on, Jaylen Brown isn't going anywhere. Could have put some punctuation on it. He did everything he possibly could to not be definitive on that. He said Jaylen Brown is incredibly valuable, but I can't predict the future. He said Jaylen Brown is part of who we are. but he said you never know what can happen. Like, he was purposefully vague with Jaylen Brown. So that tells me this was not just about acquiring Giannis or just about a Giannis Antetokounmpo trade, which it was about in 2022. In 2022, It was about acquiring Kevin Durant.
Yep.
This time around, they missed out on Giannis. There's a decent chance they turn around in the next few days and weeks and do a deal for somebody else. So I do think the damage is much more significant now than it was years ago.
Now, a follow-up question the media could ask Brad Stevens after making those statements is if Jason Tatum is also on that list, because it's not a guarantee that he comes back off of that injury looking the same.
But he is, if not the one of the smartest players in the league. And this is a situation where the Celtics weren't saying Giannis is better than Jaylen Brown. They were saying Giannis fits the needs we have on this team better than Jaylen Brown does. You're having elite player and elite player because Giannis, yes, he obviously has more of a track record. Jaylen being sixth in MVP voting is no comparison to Giannis on that score. But the need for Giannis, the need for somebody who can pair with Jason Tatum in that way, who can be that big. I just think that Jaylen understands, even if maybe the hurt takes over, and maybe that's the more important thing, that they were training. It wasn't them saying, Jaylen Brown, you're not good enough, because that idea of like, well, what else do you want me to do for you? I don't think it was a case of, well, you didn't do enough. I just don't think that was what Boston was thinking here. I think they were thinking clearly that playoff series exposed. It was more than just Jason Tatum, was hurt by the end of it. Clearly, they need to change some big things about their team, which, by the way, they knew they were going to have to do. They didn't expect to be in this situation to begin with, so they knew this was going to be a retool.
But also, Jaylen Brown might have been thinking that the Giannis and Jason Tatum pairing doesn't even make any sense because low-key Giannis loves to operate with the ball in his hands. And we've seen that clash play out with him and Damian Lillard in that short stint up in Milwaukee. Again, the optics still doesn't look right. You're about to gut half your team just for a player in Giannis who might not necessarily make a nice 1-2 punch with Tatum.
I don't know, man. I think that it would be a mistake for the Celtics to make a deal for someone who I put fifth on my MVP ballot for less than he's worth because of bad feelings. I just think you got to work those out. Get in a room. I don't know if Boston has a sports psychologist. Get in a room with Brad and the sports psychologist and Jaylen and talk it out, man. Address it head on. But they could still deal him. I absolutely believe they could, and they might want to or have to, again, to fill a need on their team. But I just don't think, quote, bad feelings should be the reason they give away who I think is one of the most valuable assets in the NBA right now.
And Jaylen Brown is indeed valuable, but the Celtics at some point, just like how the Knicks took a stand, stood by Karl-Anthony Towns and letting it be known that the Giannis talks are over. Brad Stevens is going to have to do something similar because the math doesn't quite add up, especially with today's version of Giannis. You got to pay him an additional Supermax contract. We're talking about a star that's about to enter his mid-30s with a bunch of lower body surgeries. The optics are still a stretch, so why entertain it and not stand by your player? But it is what it is. There's definitely multiple layers to this whole Jaylen Brown situation. Him being a little bit too boisterous and opinionated. And the NBA right now is at a point where they're trying to be that global league to appeal to the masses. And players taking stands on certain issues is not necessarily going to fit with that image. We can't ignore the marketability of some of these players. And depending on who, some might get a push by the league. In certain circumstances, Jaylen Brown's going to realize that when you do take a stance, it's going to come with a lot of arrows and sacrifice. You're going to lose a lot. We always hear Muhammad Ali's name being tossed out there, but he has lost a lot, especially financially. The shadow banning and low-key blackball out of certain situations like sponsorships, not being on Team USA after winning the NBA Finals MVP. These things are going to happen, and unfortunately, he's going to have to take everything that it comes with. We're in a landscape today where the audience has been conditioned to view the players actually getting to the money way more than their character. And this is why you're not necessarily going to see a Muhammad Ali or even a player like Charles Barkley who used to actually voice his real opinions. That's going to be very far in between.